Hi, this is Brasscheck, and we're recording this on Independence Day, also known as July 4th, 2025. And sometimes I despair that I must be out of my mind. I look at the wide variety of things that I write about. Other people look at it too and wondering, what's the plan? And I don't really sometimes know what the plan is. I just know somebody's got to do something. For people that are relatively new to Brass Check, you should know that this initiative was started in 1997, way back then. And we were one of the first alternative news sources on the internet. And of course, that was pre-social media, thank God. Therefore, pre-social media censoring. Nobody had the idea to censor people on the internet yet. They hadn't figured it out. Of course, they did figure it out very well later, but they didn't know how to do it in 1997. And we focused primarily on the criminality of San Francisco, which coincidentally was sort of the birthplace of much of what is now woke insanity. Uh, Willie Brown, we did a long show, by the way, with Sabby Sabs, and we posted that where I actually did a deep dive into the history of San Francisco in 1997 when Willie Brown was mayor, and all this, let's put it this way, race baiting and all that kind of nonsense was old hat. However, nobody did it better than Willie Brown. He also taught Kamala Harris. He recruited her into politics. He recruited Gavin Newsom into politics. He recruited Dianne Feinstein into politics, trained them, raised them up. And then the one I can never remember her name, Nancy Pelosi. There you go. So if you wonder where those miscreants came from, they all came from San Francisco, and they all were raised up by Willie Brown. And I was, if not his most ardent opponent using the fledgling internet in the 1990s, I was definitely one of the top opponents of him. So that's how we started. Now, lately, if you're watching, we were, well, February 1st, 2020. Who was earlier to call the COVID con than we were? And what did we say? We said this is a vaccine marketing exercise, and they're going to use it to try to develop mRNA technology, and they're going to use more speed than science. That was February 1st, 2020. And if you remember, the virus hadn't even left China yet when we said that. For our efforts, we were banned from we're banned from YouTube too. I mean, that goes without saying. But we were also especially banned from Twitter. They froze my account in like March, April of 2021. It's still up. You can see the timestamps, but they won't allow me to access Twitter, and they certainly won't allow me to post to it. This is with the new Elon Musk regime. Um, but anyway, we spent a lot of time on COVID because that looked like it was going to be a disaster. And of course, it turned out to be a disaster. We ended up being pretty important partners of JFK Jr. in his book, The Real Anthony Fauci. We did a whole bunch of our books on the subject, Unraveling the COVID Con, Volume 1, Unraveling the COVID Con, Volume 2. Uh, what else did we do? We're the only people to notice that the Nuremberg Code, the medical Nuremberg Code, had its 75th anniversary right smack darn in the middle. Smart, what do they call it? Right smack dab. That's what they say. Right smack dab in the middle of the COVID con. We had the 75th anniversary of the Nuremberg Code, and they celebrated the 70th anniversary. Everybody did who was in that industry, the medical ethics industry. And they celebrated that anniversary in the 50th anniversary. But when the 75th ran around and we were in the middle of COVID, none of those professional medical ethicists had the time to even notice that it was the 75th anniversary. Someday we're going to write a book on that. We even have the title for it. It's called The Nuremberg Code and Its Modern Enemies. And we sent certified letters to the heads of every single medical ethics department in the United States. And that would include the 35 universities that offer degrees, and also the great FDA and CDC and NIH, including Tony Fauci's wife, who, if you didn't know it, and we were one of the ones that broke the story, was head of medical ethics for the CDC. Did you know, was it, or NIH? I can't remember. I can't remember everything, but she had a high-ranking position and was basically in charge of medical ethics, which is absurd. She was a nurse who got a degree in philosophy, and thanks to being married to Tony Fauci, that got her head of medical ethics for one of the most important medical bureaucracies in the world, right? So we did that. Then we made a film, or I'm not sure how the timing went, but in 2021, I'm losing track of time here. But very early on, we made a film called The Real Anthony, no, excuse me, that was Bobby Kennedy's book. A year before Bobby Kennedy's book was published, we made a film called Fauci's First Fraud. That's it. Okay, Fauci's First Fraud. Many of you have seen it. If you haven't, I totally recommend it. Check the link below, which we then converted into a book by the same title, Fauci's First Fraud. And it's basically the script of the documentary with a lot of pictures, a lot of captions. So you can actually read the book, skim it just by looking at the pictures and the captions. Then if you want to go back and go deeper, you can read the whole book. We also did what's turning into a genuine bestseller, believe it or not. It's called What the Nurses Saw. And we were the first to document in the form of a book what the nurses saw during the COVID con in the various COVID wards. And what they saw was medical mass murder. And whether this will ever become part of universal consciousness, I don't know. But believe me, there are tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of families that are well aware of what happened to their loved ones under COVID. It's all in the book. We have a website called whatthenursessaw.com with, I don't know, 20, 30 in-depth interviews. So it's documented. And we still get calls to do interviews for that. In fact, I just interviewed this week, actually, for a documentary somebody's making in England where they had their own mass murder under cover of COVID. What else have we done? Oh, well, thanks to the Israeli genocide, we've had to spend a great deal of time reporting on the Israeli genocide. And we're not alone in that. We actually have a lot of allies, thankfully, and that has consumed a lot of time. We put out a book called Genocide in Gaza very early on. The genocide started in November, or I can't remember the year now. It's all turning into a blur. And by early January of, just a few months later, we put out the book Genocide in Gaza. It was based on the Republic of South Africa's complaint against the state of Israel in the World Court. And so we have the entire complaint. We have all the footnotes. We saved all the web addresses that the complaint referenced, and you better believe a lot of those websites have been attacked, cyber attacked by the great cyber security country of Israel. But we've got them all. So good luck, guys, on taking them all down. We had some introductory essay, and the idea we had hoped that people would use that complaint. Which was very detailed. I mean, it was obvious a conscious, deliberate genocide was taking place immediately. Like as soon as the Israelis started their I don't want to call it a counterattack. It was their punitive action against the civilians of Gaza. We thought, well, this great complaint that was developed a great effort by the South African attorneys, it would be good if people had that book in their hands, rather than just hearing about it, they could actually read it. So we did that very quickly. Our next book, and frankly, we were, one of our dreams, and it turned out to be a pipe dream, was to reach Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who we worked with pretty closely on The Real Anthony Fauci, and get him to wake up and stop supporting the genocide in Gaza. And it's I said I said to him, this is not good, and he pretty much blew me off. So I wrote a book, and the book was called John F. Kennedy, Anti-Imperialist. And he's often referencing his father and his uncle. And if I had a father and uncle like his, I'd reference them too all day and night. But you know what? You got to earn the ability to call yourself part of that family. And there is no way John F. Kennedy would have gone along with supporting Israel in its genocide in Gaza. There's just no way. He wouldn't have gone along with the endless repression and oppression of Palestinians in their own land by Israel. Wouldn't have happened. Never would have happened. And so this book is demonstration of that. And strangely enough, of the thousands, and yes, it has been thousands of books that people have written about the Kennedys over the years, about every aspect of their existence you can imagine, hardly anybody, and I mean like you can count them on the fingers of one hand, gives John F. Kennedy any credit at all for being a staunch outspoken anti-imperialist. And if you followed the last, couple of years of what we've been doing, you know the details. But very briefly, when he was a senator in Massachusetts in the 1950s, when there was no personal gain to be had at all, when it cost him political capital, he twice got on the floor of the Senate and denounced France. And boy, does France deserve denouncing. What a horrible country they are. We think, hey, French wine, chocolate croissants, the Eiffel Tower. Well, the elites in France are some of the most diabolical human beings that ever lived. I mean, they give the British a run for their money, and that ain't easy to do. And they give us a run for their money, too. But truly a horrible set of elites. Horrible, horrible, horrible behind words. Well, let me give you an example. And we don't know about this much in the United States. Algeria, what do you know about Algeria? Well, the French invaded it in I think it was 20 or 30, I don't know, very, very early in the 19th century. And they killed 1/3 of the civilian population. Okay? Village massacres, burning cropland, herding people into an early form of concentration camps, just straight out slaughter. And by the time they were done, 1/3 of Algerians' population was gone, either through direct murder, through dying from starvation or injuries. The French showed the way to the Israelis later on, basically. We got into that in great detail. I just recently on the Katie Halper show, which I'm so happy. I'm proud to be on that show, and she's got a big audience. So a lot of stuff that's been suppressed up until this moment is finally going to get out of the bag. So anyway, I wrote that book. So Kennedy was denouncing France's behavior in Indochina and in Algeria in the 1950s, in the middle of the Cold War, when France was our staunch ally. And it cost him politically. He didn't care, because he was dedicated to the idea of fairness. He believed America should be strong. He believed America should compete hard, and he believed America should compete fair, and also believed that we should be uplifting the poor nations of the world, not battering them. So I wrote that book. I sent it to Bobby. I know he got it. Because I saw the little Amazon picture on his front door, and I gave it to a very close friend of his who I know who passed it on as well. So he got 2 copies. And then the last chapter was sort of a smoking gun that if he wasn't aware of, he should be aware of now, which is that Kennedy, JFK, was in a battle, locked in battle with the Israelis about their developing of a nuclear war weapons program. And he sent them a telegram, and he basically said, look, guys, here's the deal. You've got a nuclear research facility. We have to have access to it. If we don't get access to it, there's going to be a big problem. That problem is going to reflect in a great reduction of your support. So I wrote that book, JFK, Anti-Imperialist. Well, that didn't get a rise out of Bobby. So you got to write you need motivation to write. You need energy. You need motivation. Emotion. So I had a target audience. I figured, well, if he doesn't read it, somebody else will read it. The book will exist. Then I wrote, I think this is going to prove to be a very important book. It's being pretty well ignored now, but that's okay. Sometimes things that become important later are ignored when they first come out. And it's called JFK and RFK's Secret Battle Against Zionist Extremism. Okay, pretty amazing title, really. There will be a day when everybody is aware of the content of that book, even if they don't know the book itself. It has been the most suppressed secret in American history, even more than who killed Kennedy in the first place. They will let you know that the CIA had some involvement. They'll let you know that organized crime had some involvement. They'll hint that LBJ had some involvement. There are actually, several books about that, but they will never, ever, ever, ever mention the fact that the Kennedys were involved in a basically life and death struggle with the Israeli extremists in the summer of 1963. And we all know what happened in the fall of 1963. And when John F. Kennedy was out of the way and Robert F. Kennedy Sr. was neutered because his brother was dead, LBJ was the first president in American history, cue the Star-Spangled Banner, the first president in American history to give the Israelis offensive weapons systems. Kennedy didn't do it. He gave them defensive weapons systems. Eisenhower certainly didn't do it. He was not a big fan. Truman, not a fan. In fact, it was illegal to send weapons to that part of the world, to Zionists, I think under Truman. And of course, there was no one, FDR had other problems, i.e. World War II, and it was not a big deal. So LBJ, after Kennedy got the bullet in the head, understand the sequence of events here. LBJ was the first person to give, first president to give offensive military weapons to the state of Israel. Okay, and he increased U.S. military aid to the state of Israel 700%. Okay, so we've been spending a lot of time doing our best, certainly to educate Brasscheck viewers, but also we're getting on a few podcasts here and there. I do think eventually the world's going to get its, head out of the clouds or underneath the ground or wherever they've got their head right now and take a look at this very important story. Israel's not our friend. Okay, Israel's never been our friend, and basically, and I explained this on the Katie Halper show, and let me explain it now. Israel, obviously thugs, obviously criminals. They've been that way since they arrived in Palestine. They brought terror bombing to the Middle East. There was no such thing until the Israelis, until the Zionist terrorists started bombing markets. That was their favorite thing to do, blow up markets where women were mostly, going shopping, outdoor markets, And then they bombed the Hotel David. Killing a lot of Jews, by the way, to whom they've never apologized to the families they killed. Blowing up trains, assassinating policemen. Yeah, you never hear this in the news. You never hear this history. But that's basically how the Zionists arrived in Palestine with guns blazing. But in any event, wrote that book. And it's going to, the contents will be familiar to the public, I'm guessing. Could happen fast. But I'm going to guess in about a year, 2 years, suddenly this thing that you've been hearing about on Brasscheck for years and only on Brasscheck will suddenly, everybody will know, oh yeah, we knew that. But that's fine with me. I have no problem with that, as long as the material gets out. Little frustrated that it's getting out slowly because we need people to be educated and we need people to put all pressure they can to stop the genocide in Gaza. But everybody does what they can do with what they've got. And, we've certainly done what we can do from where we are with what we've got. So it seems like I'm all over the globe. Oh, and then I wrote my memoir finally. I actually was quite involved in the commercialization of the internet. I didn't make billions, not everybody who was involved in it did, but there were people that made significant contributions. And I think objectively, and read the memoir, you can judge for yourself. I made a few pretty significant contributions. And that's in a book called, what do I call that thing? How the Web Won. How the Web Won. And in that, and now we're going to talk about how all this work actually falls under a logical umbrella, which I didn't even realize until today, which is sometimes the way things are. So the original impulse to make the web into a thing came from human beings. It did not come from, Microsoft, and Apple. They had no interest in the web. We have plenty of evidence that that's true. We know that I was there. I don't need evidence, but I have the evidence as well. Gates thought the web was, a passing phase. Steve Jobs never liked the idea of personal computers being networked, and he was definitely not interested in some kind of global network. So he poo-pooed the idea of the internet at all ever being anything important to regular people. But there were those of us who differed, right? We had a different opinion. We saw, what did we see? We saw this. We saw what's happening right now. That a guy, in his office can make a recording, share his research, put it up on a global network, and anyone in the world can watch it. Now, what we didn't anticipate was the censorship of Google and Eric Schmidt, the CEO there, who destroyed that company. But we get by. We slip through. Sometimes we're on YouTube. Sometimes we have to move over to some other platform, but our stuff gets out there. But this is what we envisioned. All this stuff you see, every podcast, every blog you ever read, every YouTube video you've ever seen, that's what we envisioned. Breaking the information monopoly. And what was our thought? We hated Microsoft. Now, there was no Google to hate because Google didn't exist. There was no Zuckerberg to exist because was he in diapers then? I don't know. He was a young fellow at least. Yeah, he must have been like 5 years old or something when we were doing what we were doing. So there was no way to hate big tech because there really was no big tech, but we did hate Microsoft. And we in my memoir, which I hope you'll get, called How the Web Won, we talk about what a dangerous situation personal computing was in the very early 90s before the web took off. And by the way, the web took off in 1995. All right, it was invented in '89, but it was just sort of crawling along, making some progress, but pretty slow. Um, there was no public awareness of the web on January 1st, 1993. Okay, you had to be a tech guy, and you had to be a very specialized tech guy, or you had to live in San Francisco to know where I lived then, to know that there was even a thing called the web. Um, but by 1995, thanks to the effort of a lot of people, frankly, including me, it became a global phenom, and there's no looking back. Like everything you do on the internet, like what you're doing right now, it runs on the internet, but it runs on the web. So the web's on top of the internet. It's like an interface. So if you use Google, just name the program, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, every darn program you use is running on the web, which runs on the internet. And the web was in its infancy when we all were working so hard to rescue it. Not rescue it, but it's like you find a baby in a basket, on a doorstep in the freezing weather, and easily could have not made it because we had two forces at work there. AOL, Steve Case of AOL, and then of course Bill Gates, who was very acting. The same Bill Gates that brought you the COVID catastrophe, also was very involved in basically ruining the potential of the personal computer, and that was a whole other revolution that occurred before the web. Right, the personal computer, and he had a monopoly on the operating system, and he wielded that monopoly power like a club. And I talk about this in the memoir, but you can hear about it now. The way he used it was if you had an innovation in personal computing that threatened his domination of the desktop, they would call you up and they'd offer to buy your company for pennies on the dollar. And a lot of people were happy. Hey, I worked on this for 2 years. I can sell it to Bill Gates for $15 million. I'm rich, And a lot of people were very happy to do that. Some people were not so happy. And then what he would do is he'd destroy you. And the classic example of this, though it did happen hundreds of times, was Netscape, which was the original web browser. You type in, you go somewhere, you look at, that's a web browser. Somebody had to invent that. Somebody had to be the first to market that. A guy named Mark Andreessen, who I talk about, who I knew, in great depth. I talk about that in the book. And what he would do then is he'd create a quick and dirty and pretty crappy knockoff of whatever innovation you had. And then while you're trying to sell it so that you can keep the lights on, he'd roll it into his programs and give it away for free. All right? The average person, if they have the choice of buying something excellent or getting something that's, about 80% excellent, and this costs money, and this is free, and this is not easy to integrate with the Microsoft Monopoly desktop, but this slips right in, that's who's going to win. So that's how he controlled personal computing. And if you think, personal computing is crap and a lot harder and a lot more complicated and a lot more expensive than it should be, you can thank Bill Gates for that. So that's what we were fighting against. The web was a way of breaking the Microsoft monopoly because, and you can read about this in the book, Microsoft, at the very time the web was this small and AOL was this big, the biggest gorilla in the room by a factor of 1,000 was ready to create their own proprietary network. Right, the Microsoft network. Remember MSNBC? That was all going to be part of this. Microsoft, NBC, TV, internet, not internet, but proprietary Bill Gates network. That's how the world of media was going to be. And luckily, thanks to the great incompetence of Microsoft, and that's what you have to know, they are the biggest collection of technical hacks and bullshit artists in the world. Their products suck. Their products have always sucked. But when you have a monopoly, it's very easy to thrive. And that's why they thrived. But The good news is they were not able to get their Microsoft network going and running up in time, because if they had, what they would have done is put the Microsoft network button right on your startup. When you power up your computer, you could have hit a button and then seamlessly be into the private proprietary network of Microsoft. And they would have controlled all the information. That's what their goal was. But thank God they were slow, they were arrogant, they were sloppy, they were fat, they were incompetent, and they didn't get it together. And we, and I include myself in that, who got the web going and made it into a thing, we stole a march on them. And that's why we have the web we have right now, instead of the online world being a Microsoft-dominated proprietary network. And you can read all about it in How the Web Won. Now, tech, right? Tech was the story there. But when you go back, let's go back now to COVID. Wasn't tech one of the big stories? Didn't we all, those of us who wanted to publish facts and reason and logic and science and real medicine, how many doctors were involved in this effort? Who thwarted us? Oh, it was big tech. All right. Microsoft absolutely was involved in that. But now we have new players. We have Google. Again, I want to point out that Google was destroyed by the CEO, Eric Schmidt. Google used to be a good search engine. And then when Eric Schmidt came along, he made it an ideological engine on behalf of his friend Hillary Clinton. Look it up. That's the story. That's what really happened. And the search results on, if you're a young person, you can't imagine how good search results used to be on Google. I could find anything I wanted, usually in the first one or two returns. I'd type in what I'm looking for, and like the second or third thing would be the exact thing I needed. Now you got to dig and dig and dig and dig, and sometimes you won't find it because Google has decided that information is not something they want you to know. That didn't exist in the early days of Google. That was an Eric Schmidt invention. Hey, Eric, you out there? We're watching you. You know what Eric Schmidt does now? He collects grand estates. You might collect, baseball cards or, I don't know, coins, stamps or something. He collects, 20 to $30 million estates. He's got part of his collection is not far from here, from my house. So I see him come in on his helicopter every now and then. But anyway, this guy, Eric Schmidt, destroyed Google and turned Google into an ideological censorship engine. Who else did that? Oh, yeah, somebody named Mark Zuckerberg, Facebook, now called Meta. And he joined the party too. And of course, the Twitter guy, I forget his name. He's very forgettable. He also, so basically big tech conspired to make sure that you didn't know the real science and the real medicine behind the COVID con. So if you were injured by a vaccine, you can thank Bill Gates. You can thank Mark Zuckerberg. You can thank Eric Schmidt. You can thank Google. You can thank Microsoft. They are absolutely complicit. If you lost a family member in a hospital, and that's why we wrote the book, What the Nurses Saw, you can thank Bill Gates for that directly, all right? Or the other guy, Zuckerberg. So we were fighting big tech. Big tech was basically Microsoft in the early 90s. And lo and behold, I didn't even think about it until today. I found myself fighting, I was fighting big tech again during the COVID con. Now, when it comes to the genocide in Gaza, we've covered this to a degree. We could cover it a lot more, but there's so much to cover. But basically, that war runs on technology provided by Microsoft, Google, Amazon, Facebook, Palantir. There's some other ones. I don't know if Salesforce, I'm sure if they could make a buck killing people, they would love to do it, but maybe they haven't figured out how to get into the game. But all of those companies have been helping manage the genocide. Yeah, in fact, the AI, has been used to help manage the genocide. And I wrote a book also too in the middle of all this called I think it's called the AI question and answer book, or the Artificial Intelligence question and answer book. And if you search my name, my name, by the way, is Ken McCarthy. You can see all my books, right? And you'll see that book too. And in that, this is pre-Gaza, I said, look, AI, yeah, there's some good things about it, but primarily it's a commercial fraud. However, it can be used for military purposes, and it's probably going to be a really bad thing when they start doing that. And I didn't have to wait too long to see that happen. But anyway, the genocide in Gaza, you can say powered by Microsoft. and Google and Facebook and every other tech company that could get their hands into it. And this lady, I'm sorry, I forget her name. It's an Italian name. She works for the UN. She's the person that just tells the truth about what's going on in Gaza on behalf of the UN. And of course, Bibi and Trump. They just every time she opens her mouth, they're talking about how she needs to be removed from the UN. This is their answer to everything: just censor and remove. Um, Not good. Not a good look. Not a good look. Um, anyway, she just came out with a report yesterday, which I just looked at, and she's basically saying, you know what? Google, Facebook, Amazon, Palantir, I'm sure Oracle's doing their best to shed blood as well. Um, these big tech companies are enabling the genocide, and they're making a lot of money from it too. By the way, it's very profitable for them. So when I was listening to her talk about her research, I realized, oh wow, there is a theme to my work. I didn't even realize it, and I guess I've been involved in a. I mean, when was 93? That was like 33 years ago. I've been involved, not deliberately, not consciously, in battles with big tech. The first one being, hey, can we come up with an open source network that anybody can publish on, and can we make it viable commercially? And that was one of my big contributions, coming up with some of the ideas that made it viable commercially. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, honestly, read How the Web Won. I don't really talk about this much because, what's the point, But if you read about it, you're like, oh, yeah, this guy kind of was important in that effort. So I was fighting Microsoft then. And then when we got to the COVID con, I'm fighting Microsoft and Google and Facebook and, whoever else, whatever else nefarious characters were, uh, involved in that. And then I guess there's a component to the Gaza work, which is, we are battling with Palantir and Google and Facebook and Meta, which is, I guess, the new name for Facebook, and also Amazon somehow got involved. That's because they provide cloud services. Um, so I guess there's a theme to all this. There's a reason for all this, or not a reason, but there's a theme that runs through it. It's not completely disconnected. In every single one of these stories, big tech, whatever big tech was at the time of the story, rears its ugly head and it does or attempts to do evil things. So that's Brasscheck. That's what we've been up to. It's been a part-time venture, but it's really a full-time venture on top of other full-time ventures. So it's been a lot of work, but it's been a lot of fun. I want to thank everybody that supported this work over the years. There's a lot of bills associated with this. There's like the server has to be paid for, the security on the server has to be paid for. Believe it or not, those little emails you get, that's a whole system, and I've got to pay for it by the month, and they keep ratcheting up the price every year. I have to have a tech guy who's more or less full time, believe it or not, to just handle all the little details to make sure everything runs. And then there's my time. I mean, I would do it anyway. Like I love to read, I love to think, I love to research. Put two and two together. It's my favorite thing to do. Um, but it's time, and if I'm doing that, I can't be doing something else. So it's an expensive hobby, but it's more than a hobby. I hope you think. I hope it is. I hope it's not just some hobbyish activity. I think hopefully we push the needle occasionally. Um, but anyway, the support makes it possible. Otherwise, it would be impossible. And it's a morale boost, because when you're doing this, there's no one in the room here with me right now. I don't know if any of this is going anywhere or doing anything positive, but I do show up every day and I, go 1 millimeter forward. So when occasionally somebody contributes, it's a big deal, regardless of the amount. I am very appreciative of everybody that contributes. And this is the time of year when we put our hands out, because all year we're, not too much asking. And then we start looking at the books and going, oh my God, we got to get some money in here or I'm going to lose my mind. So to all who've been helpful and supportive over the years, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. In a perfect world, we could have a huge outdoor party somewhere and all get to meet each other. Maybe someday that'll happen. I don't know how we would do it. Um, but in the meantime, we've got this, and again, I'm super appreciative. If you have a im impulse, right, an instinct that maybe this is worth supporting, I would encourage you in that instinct, right? Uh, it would be nice. It would be very nice to get more financial help to make this thing continue to go. But I guess basically the theme of the work, even though we've looked at a lot of different topics over the years, we're against censorship, we're against repression of information. Some of our work is in the health arena, which I got to clear some of the decks here so I can get back to the health stuff. We're letting little bits of our, we almost have a full-time effort in the health arena. But I mean, we'll put the link down below there too. And you can start digging into that. There will be a point where we really launch properly, but we want to launch properly because, when you're in that arena, you can't just give things out piecemeal. You have to be very specific and very thorough and very comprehensive in everything you say. You can't just say, hey, here's a piece, hang on to this for a little while, and then we'll get to the next piece next month. You can't do that with people's health. If you're going to start advising people, well, if you're going to start entertaining people, right? I'm not allowed to be an advisor, and I'm certainly not an advisor. I'm not your advisor. But I am a gatherer of information on these subjects for entertainment purposes only. And we want to make sure when we entertain people, we entertain them in a comprehensive way so they get the A to Z right out of the gate, not waiting around for the next piece. It's a lot of work. You'll see when the work finally comes out. You'll get a hint from this YouTube channel. Hopefully they won't crash and burn that YouTube channel. However, if they do, we've backed up all the videos and we have alternative channels. So knock yourselves out, guys, if you want to censor health information. Don't be my guest. I hope you don't do it. But if you do it, you will not destroy us. But anyway, that's so there's the making a living part of my life, which I still have to do. There's the Brasscheck part of my life. And I thank everybody that supports me in paying for this time and the resources that I have to buy. And then we have basically a venture at least as big, perhaps bigger than both of those, doing some pretty groundbreaking research related to human health. Very unique. I guarantee you haven't seen this stuff anywhere else. And if you wonder, well, that means you're working 3 full-time jobs. And the answer is, yes, I am. And as long as I'm healthy, and I'm pretty healthy, I'm going to keep doing it. But I hope some of these catastrophes sort of, I don't know, settle down, and but we are transferring to being a health publisher because, I spend a lot of time, I don't think I'm cursing the darkness, I'm just sort of pointing out the darkness, but it is more fun to light candles. So I do want to make that transition to lighting candles. But until then, there's a lot of information we have to get out about what's going on in the world that other people are not. And I'll leave you with this. We very rarely have the last word on any subject. I'm not interested in having the last word. I'm really interested in what other people have to say. I'm interested in improving my own understanding of things. But I will say this. We have very often been the first word on a subject. Okay? Absolutely one of the very first words on the COVID con. And I know there's a lot of people making a lot of money now presenting themselves as fighting the COVID con. Well, a lot of those folks didn't figure it out until 2021, 2022. And God bless them. Welcome aboard. But we were there in February 2020. Okay? That's just a timestamp fact. So that was we had the kind of among the first words on that. When it comes to the mass murder of patients, and you got to read the book, guys, and it will be crystal clear. We're not just talking to hear ourselves speak. There is eyewitness testimony. There is expert evidence. There was a mass murder campaign that took place in American hospitals, and apparently, I'm talking to people in the UK. It was a different structure because they have a different medical system. They use slightly different means, but a lot of people who should never, ever, ever, ever have died or even been injured from COVID went into a hospital and came out in a body bag or came out severely injured, those that were lucky enough to survive. We were the first word on that. We were the first word on the medical catastrophe that was taking place during COVID. There were a lot of piecemeal things, but what the nurses saw was the first book that really laid it out, and that's why it's a genuine bestseller. And you may say, "Oh, does that mean you've sold 1 million copies?" No, you don't need 1 million copies to be a bestseller. We've sold over 15,000, and for a self-publishing outlet with no support, from the media at all, and very little support from the alternative media, that is a bestseller. So we were the first word on that subject. We're not the absolute first word on the fact that JFK was truly, to his core of his being, an anti-imperialist. But we're among the first, and we're really the only people that make an effort to promote that aspect of his life. You 10 trillion words have been written about John F. Kennedy. How many times have you seen John F. Kennedy anti-imperialist in the same sentence or in the title of a book? It hasn't happened. So we're kind of the first word on that subject. Um, I'm very much hoping that we are not the last word, and that this ultimately becomes a something that's just in the air that everybody knows. That when we look back on John F. Kennedy, we look at the most important part of him, which is he was America first in a positive sense, and related to that was America as a partner and an honest competitor to the rest of the world, and assisting other countries that were under the yoke of various imperial regimes liberate themselves. Remember, let's end on this point. He started that campaign as a senator in Massachusetts. Okay, there was zero political capital to be earned. There weren't a whole bunch of people sitting around Massachusetts saying, "Boy, I really care about the people in Algeria." It wasn't an issue to anybody. He made it his issue. And by the way, I will say, and I've been on a few shows, and I hope to be on someday, breakthrough on one of the $1 million podcasters, and say that was one of the leading reasons that JFK was killed. Everyone's like, why was he killed? He was trying to, take over the Fed. He was trying to make the CIA go away. He was trying to, all that's true. He was talking about pulling out of Vietnam. All that's true. But he was on their target list very early on because he made it clear when he was a young man in his 30s as a senator in Massachusetts that he thought America's best role in the world was basically as a big brother. Not that kind of big brother. I'm not talking about that. A good brother. Let's say that, the good brother, like who uplifts his younger siblings, helps them out, makes them strong, competes with them maybe, but fairly, honestly. And when he sees them being brutalized, speaks up for them. He did it. This is history, guys. They may suppress this history about JFK, and they're doing their best. And I'm very proud to say that we're among the very first, and in contemporary times, I'd say the first. We're the first word on that subject. So we're very rarely the first word, we're very rarely the last word on any subject. I don't aspire to be the last word on any subject, but very often we've been the first word on some important subjects. And I'll also say, if you do get my book, How the Web Won, you'll see that I played a not insignificant role in all of this being possible. And by all of this, I mean regular people who have a will and are willing to put some time and effort into it, putting what they think and what they believe and what they've researched and the way they've assembled the facts in front of the public. That did not exist pre-internet, guys. And the web was the secret that made the web usable to the public, and the survival of the web was not guaranteed. And the key years were between 1993 and 1995. And believe it or not, historically, we are the first word on why 1993 to 1995 was so important. And now that it's the 30th anniversary of the big breakout of the web, this is an important book. So if you're a historically minded person and you want to know what's going on in the world we are in, you might get that book and read it. I've been told it's very entertaining, and it's basically the story of my life from it's the story of my young life, and the most focused area is from 93 to 95, and I explain the entire path by which the web went from total obscurity, January 1st, 1993, to global sensation in August 9th of 1995. It didn't happen by itself. There were a lot of people involved, and I happened to be one of them. And I also, knew a lot of the people that were making it happen, and I have a better idea than many of how it happened. And since the web and the internet and the digital world, for better or worse, are pretty much the world we're all living in addition to the real world, I think it's an important story to know. So we got a bunch of books. One way to support us is to buy the books, talk them up. If you are in communication with any of these podcasters, including the $1 million podcasters, let them know that there's somebody they should have on their show if they want to have a good show. Nobody's ever said to me, "Oh man, sorry, that show sucked. We really can't have you back." They're all like, "Oh my God, please come back." And so we have a nice little stable of podcasters that support us and help get the message out. And hopefully it'll become a bigger one. And the most important thing is that people know certain things. I'd be happy not to be doing any of this. I'd love it if someone else would come along and say, you know what, JFK was an anti-imperialist, and you know what, the average American is an anti-imperialist, and you know what, we've got a model for how we should behave in the world, and it's not a fantasy model. It was in play during JFK, and we need to go back to that. I have this crazy dream, and it ain't ever going to happen, I know, but you got a dream that Trump is going to sit down one day and go, well, I could be regarded as highly as JFK, or I could be considered the worst scumbag who ever lived for the next 1,000 years. Um, hmm, Maybe I'll go with the JFK model. I mean, everybody's got an ego, and maybe this will get to somebody that influences him, and they will look at this coldly and coolly. And if the goal is to have a good reputation, there's a very simple choice of what he needs to do, and he needs to do it fast. Um, uh, will that ever get out? I don't know, but you have to try. You miss every shot you don't take, and I do take a lot of shots, and that's the whole strategy that I employ. So to all our supporters, thank you very much. If you were curious, what is this Brasscheck thing? What are they doing? Why is he here and there and talking about this and talking about that? There is a theme. There is a method to the madness, and wait till our health stuff comes out. It'll take a while for people to wrap their minds around it. I'll give you a hint. We're not doing anything new. We're looking at established anatomy, and we're looking at established physiology. But we're looking at it in a way that no one has ever looked at it before. People are always talking about how the human being is self-healing, and they talk about the immune system, and it's like, that's a little bit simplistic. There's some other forces at work that when they are tapped, the body becomes a self-healing machine. And you better believe that the mainstream medical world has no interest in this. And I have to say the alternative doesn't either. They want to sell you supplements. They want to sell you all kinds of expensive things. They really don't want you to know how to heal your own body. That's not so good. How can I make money if you're not coming to me every week and giving me $150 for me to crack your back or stick a needle in you or whatever it is people are doing with, alternative health. Not to take anything away from the healers of the world, but I'm afraid a lot of them are more business-minded than they are health-minded. And the last thing they want to see is people realize that, oh, I could change a few things. And believe me, the things we're going to talk about, you've never heard about before. It's really odd. It's really strange that this could have been missed. The ancients knew about it. They kind of made reference to it, but, it hasn't not as of yet made it to the modern world. However, we do have that link below. This will give you a grand hint. It will give you more stuff to look at and think about than you could digest in a long time. You'll be very busy. It will transform your view of see, I'm writing a book because I got to keep writing these books. But the thing is, I write the book and then I can put that topic away. I don't have to have it in my head. I can just, here it is. It's on a shelf. If you want me to talk about it on your podcast, I'll do it. Now people can buy it and read it, and I don't have to keep it in my head. But the book is called How You're Made and What to Do About It. And most people, here's the bottom line secret. Most people don't understand how we're made. And think about it. That's important. Like if you don't know how a car is made, it'd be very hard to figure out how to fix a car. If you don't know how human beings are made and exactly what we're made of and how we function, and I'm not talking about the diagram with the, no, there's something much grander going on. And once you understand that, it's not a miracle worker, but boy, it'll change the course of human history, just a little bit. So we hope to have the first word on that as well. So anyway, to our supporters, thank you very much. Enjoy Independence Day. I'm enjoying it by not doing too much work. And This will, of course, will not come out on Independence Day because I'm recording it now and it takes a while to get these things up. But have a great summer. Enjoy your summer, and we will see you around. Okay, thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Brasscheck TV, free to you, not free to us. We've got a server bill, we've got an email software bill, we've got a tech helper bill, and that happens every month. So to everybody that is supporting us financially, that's paying for their subscription in one way or another, we really appreciate it. If you're not, consider doing so. Everybody's got money for the newspaper and the cable bill and all that. Do you have money for media that's actually serving you? That's really the issue here. And when you help us, it allows us to get this information out to the world. So thanks to all our supporters, and if you're not a supporter already, please consider becoming one.